Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of the OLI Summer Challenge. Today's topic is personal budgeting, and I'll be running you through a quick presentation about personal budgeting, um, as well as some exercises to do after to be submitted for the OLI uh, weekly challenge. I will just share my screen now, so just give me a second to get that done. There we go. There we go. So before we get into personal budgeting, I think one of the key components of being able to budget is being able to set goals. And what we'll talk about initially is goal setting. There are four fundamental components that you must have when you're setting goals for anything, whether it's for budgeting or for anything else. And I've listed them here. Those are to be realistic, be specific, always have a time frame, and make sure you take action. So not just create it on paper, but actually do something about the goals that you've set. And I'll go through those individually before I get into the budgeting part of today's challenge. So what do I need? What do I mean by be realistic? If you set up goals that are not realistic, you're bound to not achieve those goals, which in turn will get you demotivated when you're not able to achieve the goals you've set for yourself. So when it comes to budgeting, be realistic about the goals you've set. Know the difference between the needs and wants when budgeting, and create a list. And from that list, identify which items are realistic, both in terms of the cost and the time frame to acquire them. So, just as an example, maybe you're budgeting, to eventually be able to buy your own car. Um, sure, that's a realistic goal, but is that realistic in the next month? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you need a year, maybe you need 5 years to be able to save up to buy your first car or a car. Um, so you have to be realistic about the overall goal that you're setting. Be specific, like I mentioned in the previous example, be as specific as possible when you're setting goals. If you set goals that are too broad, you're not really challenging yourself to meet those goals because if your goal is to say I want to save money, um, and by the end of a year you've saved $1, you met the goal, you saved money, but you've saved $1. However, if you change that and you said I want to be able to save $100 in 6 months, now you're specific and the goal is still realistic, but it still provides a bit of a challenge for you to be able to do the work required to get there. So be as specific as possible, not just with your when budgeting, not just with your goals for saving money, but also for how you're going to spend your money. Always have a time frame. Time frames are super important when setting any type of goal. Some people have goals for things they want to achieve in their life. Some people have goals for things they want to achieve this year, things they want to achieve in high school, things they want to achieve by the time before they get their first job, before they get married, or after marriage, right? So always have a time frame for any of the goals that you're trying to achieve, and make sure the time frame is realistic. Once again, and then lastly, take action. So you've created a set of goals. You know what you want to achieve. Don't just leave it there. You need to take action to be able to convert those goals into reality, right? So if it's going back to the core of today's topic, budgeting, if it's about money, do you need to get a job? Do you need to get a second job? Do you need to go to the bank and actually open a savings account? And things like that, right? So you have to figure out what actions you need to take in order to achieve your goals. Just listing them down isn't going to make them magically happen. So now that I've spoken about those four kind of key components of goal setting, the first step into personal budgeting 101, I guess, is you need to list your goals. second here. You need to figure out what your goals are, and what you're trying to achieve by creating a budget for yourself or budgeting for yourself, right? So, is your main goal to save money? Is your main goal to have, extra spending money to be able to spend? Is your main goal to save money for college or university, or are you saving to have money to buy a car, or maybe money to help out in your at your family, like with your in your household? Have these goals set up, and right next to them create the time frame for these goals. Is it something you want to do in the short term, which is within a month? Is it something in the medium term, which is within the next year, or in the long term, which is more than a year? So, for example, let's say you're in grade 8 or grade 9. A short term goal might be that you want to have a summer job. You want to figure out, you want to have a part time job, I guess, this coming semester, um, to be able to have money saved up for college, or to be able to help your family out with household expenses, or to be able to have spending money for yourself, right? That could be a short term goal. Whereas a long term goal could be something like saving a little bit of money every month to be able to help you out with university tuition. Um, and then think about what you can do to work towards your goal, right? So if your goal is saving money, then obviously you need to have a source of income. So if you don't have a source of income, then you need to figure out how you can create a source of income. And then in order to change those goals into reality, you also need to figure out what resources you have to achieve those goals. So there's resources that are personal to yourself and that you don't need to depend on anyone for. And those are your abilities, your skills, your education. So maybe you're really good at video editing. And so that's a skill that you have, and you can maybe get a job, a part time job, helping edit videos for a company, right? Um, and then there's things that you need to achieve your goals that you need to be dependent on that are not within your control. So that might be things like you might need transit money to be able to get to your job. So you might need that initially before you start earning. So you might need to get that maybe from your parents, or you might you might need to borrow a car, maybe borrow a family car to be able to get back and forth from work, right? So you need to figure out, in order to achieve your goals, what are the resources available to you, and what are the resources you need to continue. And then when creating a budget, the first step obviously is, after you've done your goal setting, is to figure out where your money comes from. So it could be a job or multiple jobs that you have. It could be from your parents if they provide you with any money, and then as well as if there's any entrepreneurial things you do. Maybe you do bake sales, or maybe you have a craft that you create and sell. So you need to figure out what your sources of income are, and list them down. And then you also need to create a template of where your money goes, right? So you need to, the best way to do it is to, before you create a budget, is to track everything you spend in a month, right? So what did you buy? Did you see any patterns in your spending habits? For example, maybe every day, uh, because of the summer, it's hot, maybe every day you've been buying an ice cream bar at the convenience store. So, and then that way you can figure out what your normal spending habits are. And then from everything that you spend money on, what is it that you actually need, and what is it that you want? And that's a big part of any um, personal budgeting, is figuring out what you need and what you want. Needs are things you cannot live without, that you need for to live, to earn more, to earn money, to be happy. And then wants are things that you can live without. It'd be nice to have, but you'll be totally fine without them. And then also categorize everything, right? So if you've spent a certain amount of money this month, you need to categorize what you spent it on. Maybe you spent it on food, on clothing, maybe you spent it on electronics, maybe you spent it on your car. Um, And then also think about things that you might be spending money on. So maybe right now you're on summer break, so you're at home, but maybe next month once you get to go back to school, maybe you need money for a bus, maybe you need money for um, to buy a new bicycle down the road. So you need to think about what your future goals will be and list them down within your budget as well. So your budget really is a document that is a plan for how you're going to spend and how you're going to save. Um, and any person, any organization, any country that wants to do well in the long term needs to have a budget where you can plan all of these things. Because without a plan, you don't know where you're headed. And if you don't know where you're headed, you may end up in a good place, or you may end up in a bad place, right? So you want to have a plan to make sure you do end up in a good place. Um, what you need to do to create this budget is what I mentioned in the two slides before is firstly create a list of all the ways you're making money and create a list of all the ways that you're spending money. And this doesn't have to be current. This could also be future, right? So maybe right now you don't have a job, but maybe in September you're starting a job or you plan on starting a job. So you need to figure out how much money you'll be earning from that job or you hope to be earning from a potential job in order to meet your expenses. Um, and then figure out what the period for your budget is, right? So some people like to budget every time they get paid. So this might be like every other week. Some people like to budget once a month. So you want to just create a budget for your whole month and take it from there. And some people like to budget for longer, but ideally you don't want to budget for more than a month at a time. And the best thing about what a budget does is it puts you in control of your spending. It gives you a great idea about where you're spending money, shows you any bad spending habits you might have, tells you where you need to be budgeting more money. So, as an example, maybe you budgeted that you're going to spend, let's say, $10 a month on commuting costs to your school or to your work. But then after a month, you realize you're actually spending $30 a month. So, you need to adjust your budget, right? Month after month. Um, it also helps you decide what you can and can't afford. Um, and it's also a really good feeling that when you set a goal because you need something or want something and you budget and save for that thing and you eventually buy it, it's always awesome knowing that you put in all the effort and the planning to be able to get what you wanted. So this is an example slide of the type of budget you should be creating. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. So like I mentioned, the first thing you want to do is create a list of all your income in a month. And this could be current, like I said, or it could be something that you're anticipating. If it's money that you're anticipating, you put it under the budget amount. So let's just say your first job, you're hoping you can earn $300 a month. So you put that under the budget line. And then the actual is how much you actually earned at the end of the month. So maybe at the end of the month, you only earned $200 because you didn't work as many hours as you thought you would. So you put $200 and the difference would be the difference between the budgeted and the actual. See that part's done. And then when you're thinking about expenses, now some of these fields, depending on your age and where you're at in your life, some of these fields might not be relevant to you, but the idea is still the same. So in your expenses, you need to divide them into something that's fixed expenses that no matter what you do, you still have to pay them. So if you are, for a reason living on your own, then you have to pay rent regardless of whatever else you're doing, or you have to pay your mortgage as an example. Or maybe if you're in school and you need to take a city bus to get to your school. So you will have like a bus pass cost that you always have to pay for during the month. And then fixed irregular expenses. So if you notice, one of the things I put here is savings, is things that might not be the same every month, but you can plan ahead and put money aside for those things. So if you know you have a month where you'll be spending maybe a little bit more on food, or maybe a little bit more on entertainment, because you have activities with friends planned that you're going out and doing. So you're going to want to put them here. And ideally, what you want to do is, once you have your total income set up and you have your total expenses set up, you want to put any of the difference in within the savings line, right? So if you have $100 in income and you have $90 in expenses, you're going to put $10 in your savings line. And then at the end of the month, add it all up and see how much you saved. And one of the best things to do, no matter what age you're at, is to go to a bank and open an account, a checking account or a savings account, and be able to put that money aside. So every month, any money that you're saving, just put it aside. It should be money that in your mind does not exist, because it's either allocated for emergencies that you might have, or for one of your goals that you've set up, like maybe it's your college fund, or maybe it's something more short term, like you really need a laptop and you're saving up towards getting that laptop. And that's really it for this week's Sever Challenge. It's a quick one. I want you all and everyone else that's watching this now and later to think about those goals. Think about what your short, medium, and long term goals are. I want them listed out. And then using those goals, create and submit a 1 month budget. So think about what your income can or will be, and think about expenses. It doesn't matter if there's no income now, but what type of income do you need to be able to get to your goals? And then submit that to our online portal. You can always get the links, important links, and details to the submission form in the description of this video, as well as on our website at olishow.com. Thanks again for watching, and we hope to see you soon again. Take care.